Just recently I have been looking up about different eras, and one that's really interested me was the Victorian times. Now, there's a lot of good and bad to the Victorian times. There was a lot of inventions. There was a lot more understanding around things, but there was also some bad things too. So I do think it's something worthwhile talking about and going into further depth about. So I thought today that's what I'll look at, and I will do a playlist about it. But I will break it down into small categories. And today I wanted to talk about Victorian women and makeup. Um, and I think it's so interesting because it's quite different than the way we see it today. So in the Victorian times, it was seen as being higher class and closer to class to be pale, and not wear a lot of makeup. A lot of makeup back then was associated with the ladies of the night and performers as well, stage performers. So it was widely seen you would either have the natural look or you would have the painted look, and people would go for the natural look as much as they could. And that also meant being as pale as possible because being tan was seen as working outside, which was associated with the lower classes because they would have to be working. So people would walk around wearing full length, everything up to the neck collars, long sleeves to avoid having a tan. They would carry parasols or they would wear bonnets, lots of different things to avoid the sunlight. And something else that people did to achieve a more pale look was they would have things called cyanide wafers that they could nibble on because obviously you couldn't take a large dose of cyanide because it's a poison. They would take a small amount to make them look more pale and more wan and more fragile. And it's actually been a quote that someone said they were achieving a look of tuberculosis. Um, and to go along with the pale look, a lot of the time it was seen as being very high ranking to have watery eyes as well. So people often would get drops of either belladonna, which must be so painful, or lemon juice, again painful, and they would put it straight into their eyes to achieve the watery eye look, and that was seen as being high class and beautiful. Um, People sometimes, depending on how high up they were, they would crush up gemstones and they would use it as eyeshadow to make it sparkle and to look richer. And they would also do the same with coals to achieve a smokier look as well. Um, and they would use the basic rouge as well to achieve that look. And it was seen, it was looked so down. Sorry, let me start again. It was looked down upon so much. If a person had servants, they would send one of the servant girls several towns away to buy makeup so that they could take it back to the house, and they would take an everyday container of whatever and they would hide the makeup in there so that people would be so unaware that they were wearing makeup at that time. And it's just so interesting to think about, the way the makeup changed throughout the ages. I mean, you have the way makeup is now, but just think about the 20s when you had the more vampy look, And then you think about the 60s where you had a softer look, but makeup was still prevalent in that too. And then the 80s and 90s where makeup was a lot more defined. It's a very large leap from one to the other. And if you think about it, there isn't that much of a gap. It seems like it, but to think of all the different things that went on during those times, to have taken such a huge leap from the way that they dressed and the way that they showed themselves to go to, you know, natural to painted and then to a bit of both and then to people using things like contouring and blush and primer and the sprays and things like that. It's such a huge leap into the future for things like that, and I think it's so interesting to look at. So, as I was saying, I am going to create a playlist of facts about the Victorian times, and I hope to do it about different things, but Victorian times just really stood out to me because it's such a beautiful time, and it wasn't at the same time. Don't want anyone to think the suffering that people went through was beautiful, but it was more makeup and the way they carried themselves and things. It was beautiful in that way. So, yeah, thank you for listening.